Hey, welcome back. I'm here just in time for the spooky season. Even though Halloween is not a thing where I'm from and, well, it's also spring this side of the world, nonetheless I've come to really enjoy the mood this time of year. The time where horrors come out and skeletons start rattling. So, how about we talk about something a little spooky, not really, but I think if it's a bit alright. On my last video, we spent some time talking about the music CD, Dolls in Pseudo Paradise, the first of Sun's music CDs, which contains probably one of my favorite pieces of writing from him. It's the closest we've come to having some sort of Touhou horror, and what a demonstration it was, with a story that keeps you on edge every single step of the way, leaving you with this feeling of confusion and dread, wondering what really just happened. I've been fascinated with the story of that album ever since I first read it years ago, and I really just wanted to make a video talking about it for a bit to show my appreciation, discussing some of the different theories that people came up with over the years. However, it also serves as a nice prologue for another fan project from the band DonJuan, a sequel to the previous one, Wheelchair Detective Satori, which I've also covered in a video, go check it out. I was excited to learn there was more of this world to see. Even if it had left me a bit unsatisfied the last time, I loved almost all of it. And when I saw this sequel had some ties to Dolls in Pseudo Paradise, oh my god, I was so ready. Come on, you're combining what had become one of my favorite fanworks with one of my favorite stories from Soon. Of course I wanna watch that. Especially since, off the top of my head, I can't really think of any other fanworks that even reference Dolls in Pseudo Paradise. It really is an untapped market. So, with all of that said, what are we in for this time? How does it compare to the first one? Well, stick around, and let me tell you about the murder in Pseudo Paradise. Murder in Pseudo Paradise is the second series in DonJuan's Wheelchair Detective Satori saga. I really wish I could talk a bit more about the author, but there's really not that much info to gather. They seem to be pretty well known for their hand-drawn videos, as they're called, uploaded to the Japanese video sharing website Nico, with the earliest one dating as far back as 2009 involving Kikuri, of all characters. You know, one of the bosses from Highly Responsive to Prayers, the one that's a circle. In fact, this love of Kikuri seems to have become kind of a joke among users, with this tag appearing in a lot of videos, but in all fairness they seem to greatly enjoy the BC98 cast as a whole. Wheelchair Detective Satori was most definitely their call to fame though, its first episode gaining more than 160,000 views as of date, with all the others hovering around the 100,000 mark. While the series' ending was overall pretty conclusive, it did leave the door open for more to be done with this scummy version of Satori, and whether it was planned all along or the decision was taken due to the success of the series, nevertheless on August 1st, 2014, the first episode of Murder in Pseudo Paradise was uploaded to Nico, a mere 5 months after Wheelchair Detective Satori's finale. Where do I begin with this? Pretty much everything I said about Wheelchair Detective Satori last time applies here as well. The bizarre setting and just the nature of everything that happens. Once again, the character designs are great and we get to see even more of them this time around. In fact, the art only gets more and more detailed as the series progresses. There's an insane amount of attention to detail that permeates everything. The writing of the story and how it intermingles with Dolls in Pseudo Paradise, clues hidden here and there that either point you in the right direction or just serve to make the truth even more obtuse, and even some deep-cut references to the more obscure Touhou topics, as we'll see later. So from the very beginning, Murder in Pseudo Paradise was said to be a much bigger project than its predecessor, involving more characters, more twists, and placing all of its focus on the single mystery that spans the whole series. That's another reason I like it even more than the last one. Wheelchair Detective Satori was more like a bunch of quick disjointed cases, often of comedic nature, with the overarching plotline only really coming through at the end. Murder in Pseudo Paradise instead does tell one cohesive story from beginning to end. Even as the goal keeps changing, it all works to build that tension up, to keep you guessing at every step. This does mean the comedy aspect is a tad more toned down, but not to worry, there's still plenty of those moments to enjoy here. Who am I kidding? This is as insane as ever. You'd be surprised to learn, however, that, while Satori does once again play a big role in the story, she's not our main character. That would be Kosuzu Motori, the librarian working at Susunan, a bookstore in the human village. In Touhou, she was introduced in the official manga Forbidden Scholarly, which, in 2014 would have been around the halfway point or so we're not really talking about the more developed Kosuzu by the end of the manga. Not that it really matters much in this case, however, I'd say this series is kinda accurate to Forbidden Scholarly when it comes to the role Kosuzu plays. So why her? Well, there's obviously the fact that the story involves a cursed book, so she's already a perfect fit in that regard, but it's not like she has much going for her. Aside from her ability to decipher books, she's just a normal human. And that's exactly why her role in this story is that of a witness. This is something that gets repeated all throughout the series. In fact, it shows up at the very beginning, and it rings true all the way to the end. She's not the culprit nor the victim, she's not here to solve the incident, she's only here to experience the events and relate them to others, including the viewer. So what are those events anyways? What is the murder in Pseudo Paradise? I think it's about time we talked about that already. For me, the story is divided into two acts. The first is about, well, the murders. Kosuzu finds a book with blank pages, later shown to contain a riddle involving 3 keys. After that, systematically certain people who come close to it wind up dead in some way. At that moment, a blonde doll appears to Kosuzu, writing down a confession in the book's pages, signed at the bottom with the victim's name in their own blood. Now, pretty much all the murders follow the same order and methods of Dolls in Pseudo Paradise, even down to replicating the scenario in some cases and little details like how Remilla mentions Flandre's wings sticking out like the branch of Hodai, an element also present in the original story. Their supposed scenes also match up with the 8 honest men of the story, though all of them are misspelled. I thought it was simply for the aesthetics, curious with a Q, but then after seeing beautiful, there's no way. Something's up here, and we'll get to it later. I'm not gonna go over all the cases and their similarities, there's not really much to say there, but I do wanna point out a couple of the more subtle connections, like how at the beginning of the series, Akyu is seen eating peaches, while in Dolls in Pseudo Paradise, the men enter Gensokyo through a hole next to a peach tree. In the second episode, Yuka Kasame is introduced, looking quite lively with her wings out. Wait, wings? Did Yuka ever have wings? Actually, yeah. She was a guest character in Kyo-Gyoku, a game where Tsun contributed art and music, including this amazing portrait of Yuka where she's depicted with wings. But it doesn't end there. This episode also follows the events of these paragraphs from Dolls in Pseudo Paradise, one of them belonging to the song Lovely Man of Cherry Blossoms Japanese Flower, which was originally Yuka's theme in Kyo-Gyoku. In episode 4, Kosuzu is shown a vision of Byakuren's past, where she tries to commit suicide but is stopped by Sho, setting her up to be the most cowardly from the original story, who had been reborn, given a second chance at life. That said, something very similar happens to Kosuzu a bit later, and I just can't help but see the parallel here as well. She might not be one of her 8 honest men, but she definitely does fit the role of cowardly. Not to mention it happens right at the turning point where she decides to seek out Satori's assistance with the investigation, so the rebirth aspect is kinda present here as well. Now, something you'll quickly realize is that the victims are the ones shown in the main opening of the series, which, by the way, uses the same song as the ending of Ghost Stories. Yes, these Ghost Stories.
Hey, put the donuts down! Drop the Krispy Kreme, Serpico! We need your help
Did you
here!
my house look like my father and my brother after 9 months or something?
Yeah, boogity-diggity-diggity-diggity-diggity-diggity-diggity!
At first I thought it was gonna be the final boss of each game, but Satori appears as the stand-in for subterranean animism. Something doesn't add up. Well, aside from the fact that I think it's illegal to bring any harm to Oku, as the series progresses, we found out the culprit is actually targeting the most influential figures to come out of each incident. You know, the big names, the ones with some say in matters. And yeah, I guess that would be Satori in this case, seeing as she's the one who manages the hell of blazing fires. And this is also quite the smart way to keep double-dealing character out of this. It was out by the time of the series, but there's no real important character that came from that game, I'm sorry to say. That way it keeps the number of victims down to 8, to keep in line with the events of Dolls in Pseudo Paradise. Holy fuck. Anyways, the culprit is going after these people specifically to create an environment for the old rulers to return, that being of course the P98 Gals, by way of weakening the Windows barrier. I can't help but smile a little bit when meta elements get brought up like this, but hey, whatever, it's just a name. I guess you can think about it as the barrier between old and new. But anyways, this is also where the murders go along with Dolls in Pseudo Paradise. In this universe, it's an actual story that existed long ago, so the objective was to stir up memories of it to, again, bring the past back to life. Which goes hand in hand with Touhou's themes perfectly. Like, that's the main thing it has going, the whole existence of everything being tied to belief and faith. The most tangible example being how yokai from the outside world arrive at Gensokyo after people stop believing in them. Gotta be honest, I was not expecting to see it from this series, but damn, alright. Back to the story though, all of this narrows down the culprit to people with connections to PC98. There is a few, of course our protagonists Reimu and Marisa, Alice and Yuka are both characters that were brought back for the new era too. And yet some other clues so far have led to Byakuren, who's probably the most far-fetched one. I mean, she was obviously not in PC98. However, due to having been sealed in Makai and her spellcard Devil's Recitation, the fan theory has arisen that she is acquainted with the goddess of Makai, Shinki. It makes her really good as a red herring, one you actually need to go a bit out of the way to follow. And having seen DonJuan's tendency to go for the less obvious stuff, it really seemed believable for a while. But of course, after being accused, Byakuren runs away and throws the rope, completing the events of Dolls in Pseudo Paradise. We even get her culprit song in a callback to wheelchair detective Satori, finishing with the words bad end, further confirming that the wrong route was taken. This is where something breaks though, because this is supposed to be the last death in the original story. We skipped one. Miku is then killed in a kinda unceremonious way next episode. For a while I thought there was no connection to Pseudo Paradise with this one, and no reason to have changed the order, but after rewatching the episodes a bunch of times for this video, it finally clicked, and it's kinda genius. I'm getting way ahead of myself though. For now, keep these plans in mind. There is one other reason for the skip though, a bit less glamorous, but it's to make the first part of the riddle work. Yeah, remember that? I'm not gonna go over this. It involves a lot of letters, the names of the victims, the misspellings of the scenes in the book, knowledge of Japanese, twist dias and you get said, the orchestral suite The Planets by Gustav Holst, each of its movements having been used as background music in every episode where a murder happened. Fuck! There's a lot. This is like the cryptic stuff we saw in Wheelchair Detective Saturday, and it was honestly the part I enjoyed the least from that work. So I'm glad this is the only example of it here. Nevertheless, Kosuzu solved it, and that's what matters, and she's greeted by the Phantom of Paradise, Kirin Saitsu. Wait, what? Yeah, obviously a giant walk-in reference to Rin Satsuki, a supposedly scrapped character found within the embodiment of Scarlet Devil's Code. Her design is taken from this circle cut soon used in Comic 62, where both the OST and Dolls in Pseudo Paradise were released. Of course, the mask is new though, to complete the Phantom of the Opera look, which DonJuan seems to be quite a fan of. Nonetheless, none of the characters even acknowledge her existence, so safe to say the person here is not the Rin Satsuki. Perhaps even more shocking though is the fact Satori is here. She had died scheduled previously, but because she married Patchouli and thus her name changed to Satori Knowledge, the name in the book is wrong, and thus she was able to revive. I guess? What are the rules here? Are we using Death Note rules? I don't remember Death Note rules, it's been a while. Marisa's back too, curiously enough. Earlier in the story she, exploded. I'm sure there's no meaning to it though, right? But yeah, now we enter the second act of the series, and things will get really wacky. Like, Yukuris will play an important role at levels of wacky. Anyways, with the Windows barrier weakened, some people from ages past are able to cross over to Gensokyo, like Shinki and the Getsus. The objective now, however, is to destroy the book to reverse its effects and bring its victims back to life. But how? Earlier in the series, the book was deemed to be indestructible by usual means. Who is there that has the power to destroy anything with no exceptions? That's right, we're seeking out Flandre. 7 years before Goyoko even did it, everyone. This is the second time this happened with these works. What is going on? So the gang picks Flandre up and gets her to destroy the book, undoing its curse and letting its victims survive, thus also undoing the effects on the Windows barrier. Well, not before someone blows a hole right through it. That's right, Yumimi Okazaki is here to stir shit up now. Alright, are you ready for this? I don't think you're ready for this. A lot happens in these last 3 episodes, and I'm gonna go through the whole sequence, so try to keep up. In Phantasmagoria Gym Dream, Yumimi gives Marisa an ICBM named Mimi-chan. This is actual PC-98 lore. That's what exploded Marisa earlier in the series, allowing Red Chiuri to take over her body. What the fuck is Red Chiuri? Well, again we gotta look at Phantasmagoria Gym Dream. In Chiuri's story mode, at the end she winds up fighting Yumimi and, well, Chiuri. Same as everyone else, but the dialogue acknowledges the existence of 2 Chiuris, one from the outside world who is Yumimi's assistant, and another one from Gensokyo who can use real magic. To differentiate them, fans named the latter after Chiuri's alternate color palette, that being red. Thus, Red Chiuri. This is actual PC-98 lore. Kinda, I think. You got all that? Okay, good, back to Murder in Pseudo Paradise. So this Red Chiuri somehow put a hole through the Windows barrier, allowing Yumimi in. And the Yukuris were born from an orb that then copied the likeness of Reimu, Sanaya, and Marisa, including their powers. They form into a kaiju and fight Red Chiuri in what is one of the best scenes I've ever seen. And win, and die, I think, because Kirin then takes their souls, their essence. This is important, by the way. Anyways, Yumimi is still ready to go though, but she swiftly gets reminded of her role when Yukari comes into the stage. Absolutely fucking pissed, thinking she's the culprit who took Yuyuko away. Then does this count as Yuri? However, Yukari missed the mark, when Yumimi pulls her reverse Uno card and suddenly everyone is immobilized. Everyone, except for Kosuzu, Reimu, and Kirin, revealed to be the real Marisa Kirisame. Finally, as per the instructions in the book, using Yuyuko as a vessel and the 3 Yukuris along with herself as a sacrifice to give it power, Marisa succeeds in bringing back Mima. That's right, I fooled you! None of this matters, this was all an elaborate bring back Mima joke. Alright, Mima and Reimu have their climatic showdown, which quickly ends with a very anticlimactic way, and we're shown all the PC-98 characters hanging out with the Windows ones, having a boost party in true Touhou fashion. Such is the paradise Marisa wished for, a world where old and new can live together, even if she's not here to experience it, says Satori, telling her still vegetative sister Koichi of these events. That's when Kosuzu comes in, proudly announcing that Satori Komeiji is the true mastermind behind the murder in Pseudo Paradise, having planned all of this charade with the sole purpose of killing Marisa, as an act of revenge for putting Koichi in a coma. There's two questions that haven't yet been answered that can be explained with Satori's intervention. Where did the book come from, and why did everything follow dolls in Pseudo Paradise? Well, Satori provided the book, telling Marisa it could be used to bring back Mima. I omitted this earlier, but during a conversation with Shinki, she mentions that the Yama and/or Shinigami would be able to create such a book. Satori has connections with Hell, it's not out of the question that she could have gotten her hands on it that way. She also set the stage for the events to play out like dolls in Pseudo Paradise, using her abilities to make everyone remember the story and follow it as closely as possible. Thus, the case of murder in Pseudo Paradise is finally closed. Satori gets her spine broken and once again sings her own culprit song. The story ends with one final callback to dolls in Pseudo Paradise. It's just a change in the population count. Not important news in the least. What the fuck? Okay, so a lot happens in the series, so much that I feel I needed to give a somewhat full summary to properly talk about it, and I still skipped a bunch of stuff to keep it short. I think overall, this is a surprisingly well-crafted mystery, one that gives you all the pieces needed to solve it while also doing a pretty good job at trying to derail you. The story is pretty well paced and enough time is given for things to cook, for the viewer to wonder how everything fits together, and for the eventual reveals to be as impactful as they should be. I think the best example of this is how the P90 stuff gets teased for a while, and once we finally meet Shinki, it's kind of a big deal. In fact, a whole episode is dedicated to the conversation between her and Kosuzu, and she's as intimidating as you'd expect one of the old rulers to be. The twist that Marisa was in on everything is, I think, pretty well telegraphed. She was already a suspect due to her connections with PC-98 and the fact that she suddenly exits the stage pretty early on. Also, this is where I wanna quickly come back to Miko's murder, linked to this passage of Dolls in Pseudo Paradise where a blonde shrine maiden is mentioned. I'm convinced now that this refers to Marisa here, now donning her Kirin persona who looks shrine maiden-esque. But there might even be another tell in her clothes, though I'll admit this one is even harder to pick up since we don't really see Kirin that much, all things considered. Though Rin Satsuki has no official design, her dress is often depicted as being red in color, meanwhile Kirin's dress is brown, the same color Marisa wears in the series. And this is unrelated, but if you wanna go even deeper into this rabbit hole, I'm almost done with this, don't worry, Marisa choosing this particular look might also be a reference to this illustration by Sun, where he comments that it kinda looks like Marisa cosplaying as a shrine maiden. You insane madman, what are you doing to me? I could gush over all day about how much I love all the callbacks to Sun's less known works, and how fitting it is that they are present since these were all made around the time of Dolls in Pseudo Paradise. It's a topic that fascinates me, but that all in all is pretty hard to integrate into a story, and yet DonJuan did it, and it's amazing, and it works within the context of the story, which is the most important part to me. And now that I mentioned Dolls in Pseudo Paradise again, it's great how this series manages to follow almost all of it down to a T, without it feeling like a simple retelling of the story. Even its themes, like, I talked about this on my video about the album, but the most likely answer to that mystery is that a human or former human was behind the murders. And well, Marisa is a human who did all of this in order to achieve her own paradise. There was just so much love and care put into weaving all the aspects of Dolls in Pseudo Paradise into the story, and the end result is nothing short of impressive. Of course, not everything is perfect, though as far as unexplained things go, I can only think of one, and that's the scene where everyone gets immobilized, which turns out to be Chancel, this metapod looking thing. It was introduced in Wheelchair Detective Satori, where it acted as a VR device. It gets mentioned a couple times here as well, and the whole event is foreshadowing an earlier talk between Kosuzu and Yuka. As to how it ended in everyone's heads and why Marisa had control of it, that's anyone's guess. It ends up not making much sense, and I feel like it could have not been here at all and the story would have been able to progress just the same. Something I'm a bit turned on once again is the real ending, the big reveal that Satori was the one behind everything. On one hand, it is a good twist. We do get some hints that point in this direction throughout the series, including some foreshadowing in a couple of the openings, where Satori and Kirin are seen as opposed to each other. And this reveal is also a good way to tie everything back to Wheelchair Detective Satori. This is supposed to be a sequel after all, and I'm pretty sure that's the main purpose of it. Yet it all feels a little bit out of place in a way. Maybe it's the lengthy explanation that ensues, or how we're just bringing this topic up when the rest of the story makes almost no reference to it, or how Satori supposedly used her abilities to bring back Dolls in Pseudo Paradise. That in particular didn't sit too well with me. All in all, like I said, it seems more like a bonus to link back to the events of the previous work, and in that regard, I think it's good enough. Alright, I think I dragged this video on for long enough, let's wrap things up. This is a great fanwork, let's make that clear. There was a great deal of thought and effort put into crafting this gem. From the writing, the way it brings so many aspects of both Touhou canon and fanon into it, I seriously had so much fun putting everything together and even discovering some new things I was not aware of before, to the art and even the music choice for every scene. Seriously, the whole sequence of Mima's revival with Fan of the Opera playing in the background is just so good. Such an excellent way to bring about the finale of the series. I already mentioned in the other video how much I love DonJuan's art, and I don't have much to add here. It's still great. It complements the tone and whimsy of the series really well, and you can even see a bit of an evolution in the style as the series progresses. It really comes through in the openings for the episodes, which are a joy to watch as always. I love the arc of Kosuzu going from this cowardly girl who just wants out of the whole thing, to a hardened detective determined to get to the bottom of things, even taking on some of the mannerisms from her mentor Satori. The casual gags are also as good as always, and I think that's what really embodies the soul of this fanwork. Telling a dramatic story, but still obviously having a lot of fun with it. Again, the fact that this all ends on a big Mima is back punchline, I don't think there was any better way to do it. That's a perfect summary of the whole experience. So there you go, that's Murder in Pseudo Paradise. What a ride! I was gonna make this video eventually anyway, since I love this series as you can probably tell, but I chose to do it now as a way to get back into the gist of things after this long hiatus. Boy did it not go as expected, there was certainly a lot more to talk about than I originally thought. If you came here having watched the series, then I hope I was able to provide something new, and if you haven't watched it yet and I just spoil all of it for you, well, go do it anyways, it's still worth the experience. But anyways, thanks for your patience all this time. Hopefully there's not another gap like that between uploads. And if you made it this far, well, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to support the channel, and maybe comment too if you feel like it. As of this video's date, I'm not back to streaming yet, but chances are I will be soon, so if you're watching this in the future, well, jump by my streams on Twitch if you have the time. With that, see you next stream.